welcome aboard.
Welcome back, G. Good to have you back. You've missed a couple of good weeks, or you haven't missed them.
I only missed the one.
I was going to say you've seen them, but we haven't talked about them. Unbelievable. I love an after the siren goal. I love the fact that they convert because it's on them when they miss. Ask Brad Johnson if you like.
Yep.
And when they kick it, the team just go crazy. It's a great feeling.
So separate to Richmond supporters, so the opposition fans don't get a say. Everybody else in footy wants the player to be successful, to live the moment and then to avoid the other side of it. And you think through the recent ones. So Noah Anderson, Max Cornes is a very straightforward shot at GMHBA, but he's got a history of missing those. Gary Rowans is a brilliant kick that curves in. Zach Bailey, maximum pressure from the best part of 50 metres out with a bloke doing a handstand on the mark. Jack Nunes, outrageous from the boundary in Perth. Equally so, Robbie Gray.
Yeah.
So the players that have had
Jordan
recent chance have all soared.
Yeah.
Jordan Dawson earlier this year
He mishit
at
his
Adelaide
Jordan.
Oval.
He mishit it and it come back. I was disappointed with Stewie Jew's celebration. I thought he could have given more. I thought he had more in him, given the importance of that kick to his footballing journey in 2022. I was disappointed in the big man. I thought he could have really let himself go and just let us all in. But the celebration and what it does for football up there. They've got some show cards at the moment, some draw cards. Guys like Rankin who didn't play on the weekend, but Miller's in a fantastic vein of form. You got Matty Rao growing every week. The captain's leading the way perfectly. Their backline's starting to look really solid. And Ballard's taken some giant steps this year, become a top liner in terms of intercept markers down back. So I really enjoy their uniqueness of their forward line. It's really different. This is really important for the AFL, for this kid to kick the goal after the siren. It's important for the code to have that euphoria go to the other side of the fence. Just allow the fans to go crazy for a while. We've seen the vision from Papua New Guinea, from the Wago family. They're right involved. It's travelling everywhere at the moment. The stories coming out of the Suns are getting better and better every week. Re-signed the coach. Everyone's happy. It was just such a perfect weekend. I know the Richmond fans don't think it's a perfect weekend, but for the code, it was an enormous result.
So the winter school holiday matches on the Gold Coast against big Victorian teams. So 16,000 against Collingwood, 18,000 against Richmond. There's 3 weekends of the school holiday. That should be a plank in the fixture. The June, July school holidays against the three of the big Melbourne clubs, consecutive games on the Gold Coast. And then you offer the opportunities for families to go, have your holiday, go to the footy. There was a tremendous Richmond representation at that game as well, and you can make big events out of those.
And they should be Thursday nights. You're pretty much guaranteed reasonable conditions. There's a bit of theatre about Metricon. I reckon there's a different feel, isn't it? The games there have a different look. I know it's a little bit slippery and a little bit dewy, but it's just that I think we've always had pretty reasonable footy matches there. They're in a different zone at the moment, the Suns, to what they've been the last few years, so let's embrace it.
The King's Gambit, the kick after the siren to win a game. Why don't we just spin that straight into Richmond and the big issue with the Tigers, who felt like they might have been on the tear. They were a team capable of rising. They lost that game to Sydney with a 5-goal-plus lead at the SCG. They lost from a winning position against Geelong, and now they've lost from 40 points up. And the trouble is the injuries that have been sustained along the way. So if you'd said by the end of Saturday night, Nankervis, Soldo, Lynch would be out along with Dusty, Cochin, Lambert and Floston, you'd go, yep, that's probably a team that's going to lose. But the circumstances in which that happened over the last 6 minutes.
It was a strange Richmond game because they played so well for so long. And the game stayed at high speed. It was almost like they had no awareness of clock. And it was like it was a 4-quarter game. It was an 8/8 game that we were halfway through, and they were just going to keep going frantic until they broke, And all of a sudden it was, oh, hang on, we're in trouble here. And at no stage did they slow the game down. And I just, it's not who you play, it's when you play them and all those sorts of things. But if Cochin was out, I couldn't help but think they lacked one leader just to slow the whole thing down and to set the game, the field up properly to deny easy opportunities or quick opportunities, one-on-one opportunities, all those sorts of things. If Cochin was there, they win this game. That was all I could think about on the night. And they're an awkward team to work out at the moment, Richmond. I love their system. I think their system is still the best system in the competition. It can beat anyone. Now, they've had some challenges with some personnel and in-game. There's nothing worse than losing a key position player in-game. So they lose Lynch in-game, early in the first term. He's the one who just separates the game. And then the ruckman situation becomes a real problem for them. And it'll be a problem going forward. So they're banged up. They've been here before. I think what that does to Damien Harvey is, okay, we're probably not going to make top 4 now. Let's just absolutely make sure we lock away a top 8 position. They've got a healthy draw. They've got good opportunities with the draw, I should say, or the fixture. So they get there, and then it's just a matter of how healthy they can be when they get there. They take a no risks approach with their players now, which we've seen in 2019, I think we saw this. They'll be a seriously dangerous proposition come September. One of the teams is going to be really unlucky to finish 5th or 6th and come up against Richmond, who are going to just sort of find their way into the bottom bracket of the 8, in my opinion.
Yep. So just the litany of sins inside the last 6 minutes, it really does bear going back and watching what transpired. So the first was, and kudos to Charlie Ballard, for the charge in to smother the Castagna kick. Now, it's so. Do you watch it and go, well, Castagna should have read the play and given that handball over the top to Cumberland, but it happens in such a hurry. And he comes at an angle where I don't know. But that's 5:52 to go.
Yeah, and how did he not, Jared?
So how did he not see him?
It was Kaczynski lack of peripheral.
So it sits on Castagna for not giving the
100%.
one over the top.
Not just kicking the goal. 3 steps earlier. He slowed down for 5 steps. I mean, come on, man. Come on. Little men make big mistakes, don't they?
And then Grimes drops a chest mark with 42 seconds left. And it's just after the Joel fumbling goal. Ainsworth and Bowes bring the ball forward, and Grimes drops a chest mark. And Grimes had been immense. I don't think there's any doubt about that. If he takes that mark with 42 seconds to go, that's it. That's the stationary play that they needed. You have to do a lot wrong to lose that game from the position that it had got to.
Yeah,
and they did points. A lot wrong.
Yeah, they did. I think it started earlier than that. They coughed up 3 goals from stoppages. The Suns are a seriously good stoppage team, particularly forward 50 stoppages. I think they're the best in the comp at scoring from forward 50 stoppages. So whenever there's that opportunity, you have to go on high alert as a defensive unit. Sam Day did some things. Touk Miller, did some things. Matt Rowell did some things at stoppage. Noah Anderson was a constant stone in the shoe of the Tigers all night. So whilst the margin was 40 points, they were still doing enough, the Suns, to threaten. And when they start to convert from those clearance victories, you could feel it build, couldn't you? You kept looking to score thinking, it's just a fraction beyond them. And it's Richmond. You have that extra trust because it's Richmond. But I think it set in the third term, and I think the clearance brigade of the Suns started it. And Grimes has made 2 mistakes in 10 years, so no one's And that's the conditions up there. That's why that's such a great home ground advantage. It's a little bit more difficult to mark the ball. It's a little bit more difficult to pick it up at ground level under real pressure or under genuine speed. So that's a real opportunity for the Suns. So they hunt after that ball because they think this guy could drop this. Most teams stop. If that game's at the MCG, you stop and you're almost man the mark instead of charging on the potential to be a loose ball spill. So that's their luxury. That is their opportunity, given their home ground advantage. The square up kick from Sam Day, super intelligent. I mean, can you imagine having that shot from the paint? What percentage would that? I mean, Champion Data, I hate to do it, but Champion Data would have the numbers. I would say that'd be a 3% opportunity from there. I mean, outside the paint, after the siren, you can't change your line. You got to run straight line or make your angle even poorer before you can to try and convert. I don't think that's Sam Day's go, really. So to square the ball up immediately, given the fact that there's only 30 seconds to go, that's the bit that always scares me when a player takes that mark and he says, "Oh, if I kick this now," and the siren goes, "I'm going to look like the biggest peanut in the world." And people will come from everywhere. Why would you do that? So you take all those sorts of risks, and when they pay off, you've got to say, well done. Terrific.
How are Richmond going to cover what's missing? Nankervis, Soldo, Lynch added to the woes that they've got.
Yeah, well...
That's the risk with them right now. They've gone from a team on the tear that I could see after the Geelong game. I was convinced they would pick their way through and be something. Their risk is if they drop one of these games that you imagine that they would win, and personnel plays a big role on that, they could fall out entirely.
Yeah, and Chris Scott, I think, puts this perfectly. You've got to risk missing the lot to risk being good enough to win the lot. And if you fall short somewhere in between, well, as a coaching panel and a footy club, I think you wear that. And given what they've done, they've got enormous credits in the bank and we've got enormous belief in them. But you're right. The worry is that they're getting so much out of so few. I'm not sure what more Shea Bolton could be doing at the moment to ensure they get over the line. Like Prestia comes back in, does what he does. He's a clearance beast and he was very good. Rioli, whether he's half back or leaking further up the field to be a scoreboard impactor now, he's one of the form half backs in the comp right now. So they're getting maximum out of say 4 or 5 players. They just are waiting for some of those senior core troops to come back. If Lynch is obviously going to miss 2 or 3. You've got Cochin. I'm not sure when he's back. You've got Dustin Martin. I mean, Dusty out there. It just changes everything. So I think the gaps are so small this year. We were just talking at the back with Ross, and I think he made a very good point. We don't have a great team this year. We've got half a dozen very good teams, and we're 6-7 weeks out from the pointy end, and we've got no idea how they're going to hit the line and what the grid positions are for the finals. Because as soon as we put a line through round 23, it all starts again.
Yep.
So it doesn't really matter what you've done in the lead up from that point forward.
But your position on the grid is going to mean the world.
But not if you know it's 5 to 8 now. Not if you know it's already 5 to 8. So at best for Richmond, it's 5 to 8 after the weekend for me. So they know that. So all their decisions now, I think, become a little bit easier. Okay, that's where we're going to be. Let's charge everything towards first week finals. And if it means Lynch misses an extra week or Dusty or Cochin, well, so be it. And if we risk missing out, if we finish 9th and don't get there, well, we couldn't win it unless we made these decisions anyway. So there's some bravery in your planning now, and more than probably what you do in game, because you can't play one a week early now, because these injuries in the last month of the season are terminal. You're in real trouble if you lose one for 4 weeks at round 18.
The debate is on order. Is Melbourne still the best team in the comp?
In my opinion?
Yeah.
You're going early on my seedings, Gerard, effectively. I think they are. I think they are. And I understand people are jumping off Melbourne quicker than the Titanic at the moment. It's unreal, Gerard. But I still think that what they do causes you to change so much of who you are that it can win. They can be beaten. They're not unbeatable. No one's unbeatable. And second year at the top is always harder than first year at the top. So last year, and Lee showed some numbers last night regarding their form versus top 8 teams. 7-1 last year, nowhere near that this year. That's logical to me, because once you're at the top, people study you for 6 months through the off season, and then in season, you're still considered the best. They're still considered the best by every coach you ask in the land. So they're looking at ways of going around Max Gawn. They're looking at ways of engaging May. How do we put a tag on Lever? What do we do? What do we do with Langdon? Now they want to go far. They've got this holding paddock defender at the back. When May stands out the back, how are we approaching it? So every aspect of their game is being picked apart. So now we're seeing blitzarves go in and tag Petrarca, then roll to Oliver, then roll to Viney, then play ruck minutes. And all these things are getting picked apart with their game. And you know what? Sometimes they work. And they worked on the weekend for Geelong. They worked big. Fantastic. Great coaching, Chris Scott, tick. But you had to change a lot of what you do, really. And I think Geelong have set up to beat one team all year. They've set up to beat Melbourne. Now, there's a risk in that, and he's talked about that time and time again. So, fantastic coaching to this point. It's round 17 just completed. There is a long way to go. We haven't even got to the real stuff yet. Melbourne are going to qualify top 4. That I do know. And when they do that, they will still be considered the best. Whether they start on pole position 2, 3 or 4, to me is irrelevant. I still think they've got this weaponry in the midfield that can ruin any game. They're so brutal, they can ruin any game. And just, if you can't win contest in finals, you can't win. Okay? So they will challenge every team to come with Oliver, Petrarca, Viney, Gawn or Jackson. They're the facts. So jump off if you like. I'm going to stick fat, and I understand that there's teams that can beat them, but hey, no one's bulletproof. I still think they're the same team as last year, but it is harder to win second year at the top. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
They're not quite the team I had envisaged at the start of the year that they were going to be, but I still think they can be that by the end of the year. So they've lost 4 of their past 6.
Yeah.
There's been a sort of a re-rationalisation of what happened early. I'm not a big fan of the retrospective fit. It was interesting to see them getting so badly beaten in the midfield on Thursday night.
Yeah,
I thought.
Yeah, it was, and we don't see that often.
Their forward line's not good enough to be able to absorb that.
Yeah, I don't think their offense is a major priority, and that sounds silly. It's contest and defence. Every time you hear Simon Goodwin, contest and defence. I'll tell you what they need, and I think every team that's gone on and win it has done this late in the year. They need fresh. They need something to come in that's going to provide a bit of a spark, a bit of energy, whether it's youth or a story. It's someone to come in that's, hey, come on, let's go.
Yep.
And last year they had the little fella, little red-headed half-back. What's his name? Bowie.
Yep.
He come in. He was unbeaten his last 7 games. Richmond had Marlon Pickett, like an unbelievable story late in the piece, and it just brought us all in. You know, it just created an emotion in the group. I think they need a driver. They need a cause that's not just winning games of footy, something that the group can invest in and feel. You know, footy clubs are strange places, Jared. If you've got another reason outside of just winning a game of footy, it's a job just winning a game of footy, but it's an investment when there's a cause. I think they need something fresh.
Well, let's take the other side of that coin and do the preliminary final integrity on Geelong.
On Geelong.
Who now find themselves on top of the ladder. I thought if you wanted a singular clip to say this is the new Geelong in the way that they're trying to play, there's a moment halfway through the second quarter. It's a kick in.
Oh, yeah.
Tui comes running in. He bounces the ball in the right back pocket.
Yeah.
But he pulls the kick to the back
Stanley.
edge of the centre square. Stanley marks. He aggressively kicks the ball into the centre square for Holmes. The return of Holmes has been hugely significant. He wheels to the right and he kicks to centre half forward where Guthrie marks. He hands it to Duncan, to Selwood, to Smith, to Myers, to Close, who kicks the goal. And there's not even the thought of stopping in that. So they take aggressive positioning and don't stop. So if you want to put a signature moment up as what's difference, I think you can clip that and say that's Geelong 2022.
Yeah. All right. So we watch the game. We see the same thing, but we see it a different way. So where's Max Gawn in that?
I didn't worry about what
so
was pitted against them.
Yeah. I get that.
That's all on. So what's changed about Geelong from their past 2 years, grand final, preliminary final, to this year? That's what's changed.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I'll reword that. So I think that they were prepared to take those risks. That they are still a short kicking team, even though they move the ball quick. So to pull it a 50-metre kick back to the point of the square is not really them. But on this occasion, they want to take those risks because Max Gawn, if you go down the line, Max is there. So we don't want to go to Max. So what they do is they have Stanley charge forward after he takes the ruck and becomes effectively a centre-half forward or a full forward. So if Jackson's dumb enough to go with him, you'll play behind the ball, my friend. And you may be exposed. You may not be, but this is not where they want you to be. So then who's in the ruck? So for Geelong, it's Blitzarves, who was standing next to either an on-baller or as a wingman. It was pretty much on-ball all night the other night. So he's not, Jared. He's not. He played ruck. He was in the ruck. They won the clearances 17-4 when he was in the ruck. So he had an outstanding night in there as a contributor. When he was out of the ruck rotation, he played on Petrarca. So just have a spell off Max Gawn and go and lock away Petrarca. Yep. When Petrarca wasn't there, he went to Oliver. So he played on the ace, king and queen of the Melbourne Football Club for the whole night. What a horrible job. How do you sell that to a player? So I think that he is the weaponry that other teams don't have. He changes the dynamic of the ruck position. They don't have a ruck position, Jared. They have a centre bounce ruckman in Stanley, and then they have 4 midfielders. What an asset. So the umpires, and I think they're cluing on, they're starting to throw the ball up quicker in Geelong games because they see, and I think they've been told by Chris Scott, and so they should be, that we are maximising a runner. So don't wait for that ruckman for 20 seconds for him to come and correct. If he's not there, throw the ball up and let us maximise our advantage that we've orchestrated to give us some spoils. So I think the use of blitz halves on the weekend was the biggest win for one player of any game I've seen this year. I have not seen a team go after the ace, king and queen of Melbourne with the same player. Remarkable. So Chris Scott, full credit to him. They've changed their system. They right now, if you look at the last 6 weeks of footy, they are the number one team in terms of if you give them the ball, it becoming a score at the other end. Now, Jeremy Cameron plays a hand in that. Stengel plays a hand in that. Hawkins had a massive night despite only kicking 1 goal. I think he had 11 score involvements. So everything they did the other night worked. But you got to reload and do it again, Jared, in 6-7 weeks. So that's the challenge, but huge tick to what they've built. So in terms of integrity, we know that their brand has been an unbelievable home and away brand for years. It has fallen short, whether you want to admit it or not. It has fallen short in the 2 biggest games of the year, preliminary final and grand final, and they've run aground against some seriously good teams, Geelong and Richmond. But they've done it.
Richmond and Melbourne.
Sorry, Richmond and Melbourne. They've run aground against Richmond because they scored against them in bursts. Geelong can now score in bursts, so that's a huge change. So I'm thrilled for Chris, and I'm excited about what this brings for the finals. But they, unfortunately, going to have to do it again. And I think they showed a few cards this weekend. So the next time they play, they'll be ready for that.
Craig's in Reservoir. He's sent through home isolating with COVID and just did the ladder predictor. He has Melbourne missing the top 4.
Is that Lee Montagna? They may miss the top 4. You know what? I don't see it. You can slant things however you like. But I think they're still the best team in it, whilst not being top of the table.
All right. So that's the debate and preliminary final integrity. We're going to do the curiosity, which is the Brisbane Lions COVID crisis and just how costly that might be. Is the trend of these things is it's usually more than 1 week once it's in the club. We saw the cost of it yesterday. The pressure index is really obviously the Bulldogs. Just a nod before we get to them.
On your COVID, when would you like to get COVID, Jared?
Not now.
No, would you like to get it now?
February.
No, but they've had it in February.
I know.
So second wave. So would you rather be Brisbane now and get it around 17 or wait for it to roll into Melbourne and get it first week finals?
Yeah.
What happens if it arrives round 22, round 23?
Yep. I do hear that, but they could completely lose their place over the next couple of weeks.
Do we go into a bubble again?
Well, the AFL's committed not. I don't imagine if our society's going in. We're not. I don't imagine we're going back to
not society.
Restrictions and that, so I don't think they would.
But in terms of impacting a final series, that's different too.
So yesterday's a good example of it, which is why we'll make that the curiosity. Can we just do one worse bit? So you could really obviously go Rory Lobbs peroxide, but Phil Davis's injury, Kingy, does it feel like the end?
Yeah, and I hate doing this because he's been such a great player. And look, I think Phil's the sort of guy that walks in today and says, "Hey guys, let's just sit down. Can we have a beer? Can we have a beer? I'm sick of doing your rehab programs. Let's have a beer." So at the end of this season, over his last 3 years, he will have played 26 games and missed 33. So that's just it. At his age, he's done, and his body's failed him, and it fails us all at the end. In different ways, but his is obvious for all to see. So we all, again, just say thanks. Thanks for setting up this football club. You've been an unbelievable warrior. You've been a great leader, a great orator. I love speaking with him. He's one of the great conversations that you can have. He talks about the game in a really simple manner. He's so honest, and he's been so good for that footy club. But this is it. Unfortunately, his body's just failed him, and I hate seeing when those hamstrings require you to be carried off the ground, Jared, you know that's a 10-weeker.
Yeah.
So thanks, Phil. You've done an amazing thing for a new franchise.
David Kingy spoke about conviction, preparation and sophistication, and questioned conviction and preparation, but was resolute on sophistication. Now, if I extrapolated that, that's strategy. Are the Bulldogs sophisticated enough? Are they strategically sound?
Are they strategically sound? Well, all right, we're outside looking in.
Yeah.
So we don't know all the small dramas and trauma they've got going on inside, and they will never share that with us. So let's just talk about what we know. And we judge teams versus the rest of the competition. So everyone else has got their own dramas. So they lost a lot of assistant coaches last year. Mm-hmm. So they lost Stephen King, Ash Hansen, Joel Corey over the last couple of years. And I think they lost a lot of guys that had a full handle on exactly how it should look and how it should feel, and they've got a new batch coming in, and there's a settling period for those guys. You've got to earn a bit of trust, and you've got to show the players you've got the answers, and some of them don't bring the cachet that a Michael Voss brings or a James Hird brings as they walk in, that they're not Hall of Famers. So is it a little bit harder for that? And I think I think they've been short of the mark with what's smacked them in the face for 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks. The game right now is won on turnover. And if you cannot create turnover, you cannot win consistently. You certainly can't beat the best teams. You can't. So if you look at the last 6 weeks, they create the 13th most midfield intercepts. So they don't win the ball back between the arcs. They're 17th overall for intercepts. 17th. So that's not a profile. It's not going to make the 8th, let alone challenge for a final. Their defensive 50 is 18th in the competition. It's the worst defensive 50 in the comp. So they don't stop it at halfway, and when you get through, you score. So they don't defend either way, either or. Their midfield, which is their whole salary cap, is the midfield. That is their whole investment. So this is a prime Bontempelli, McRae, Liberatore, Hunter, all these guys. Add Treloar, that they're being subsidised. So they're effectively over the salary cap, Jared. Collingwood are paying for, we'll call it 300,000. So whatever the salary cap, you say it's 12 million, they're operating on 12.3. So they're at full max plus. No one else has got that spoil. No one else. So you want to be capitalising on that. They're the 4th ranked at clearance and they're 9th ranked at contest. So it's not an absolute dominant strength. So when I look at the teams that are above them, it's teams like the Gold Coast, it's teams like Fremantle now that are coming with a rush. It's teams like Geelong. We talk about Melbourne every week, where they're with their core midfielders. So they've lost their strength, and then there's nothing else. I've been saying for 18 months that I think Aaron Norton, and I know he kicks goals, and what works for him. But does it work for the team? Your job is to maximise the player for the betterment of the team. If you don't win intercepts, you don't win games. So he's kicked 40 goals for the year. Terrific season. How many would he have created if he was an All-Australian version of centre-half back? They have not invested at centre-half back. Tim O'Brien hasn't worked and has never been that player anyway. So anyone that tells me, this hasn't, they traded for this. He's never shown that he could be that player. Alex Keith, since he's gone to the Dogs, has not really been an interceptor. Now, you can mount a case that Ed Richards has become a good interceptor. He has, but he's a task-oriented player as well. They put him on some severe matchups. He has a matchup as well as the ability to play on him off. So I don't think they've invested in where the game says you need to be strong. That's my and I'm happy to have said that. I've said that for 18 months, and they made a grand final in that period. So you wear your wax along the way as well. But against the very best, if you can't cut the ball off or win the ball back, it's unsustainable. So now, what do they do now? So you get to the end of this season, what do you do? They keep telling me that everyone's invested in getting Rory Lobb. Now, how does Rory Lobb help that? Does he force a Josh Bruce to centre-half back or an Aaron Norton to centre-half back? Sam Darcy, everyone says, he'll go and play centre. He's a kid. He's not going to be an All-Australian level centre-half back for 2-3 years. So give him a chance to just be a normal player. Jamara, can he do it? I don't know. He's a coaster. I'm not sure he's that sort of player. Yep. So that's the glaring omission in their game right now, and they haven't really addressed it for months. Outside of that, so it leaves you a pretty average footy team, I think.
It's an unflattering year. They haven't been able to finish top 4 in the Beveridge years yet, and this was it. So they lived in the top 4 last year, and they fumbled it after the Josh Bruce injury, pulled themselves together, tremendous final series, including Leon Cameron was great listening on Crunch Time on Saturday. He spoke about the intangibles of getting to a position inside a grand final where you might have felt like you had it won and then ruthlessly put to the sword after that. They're miles from being a top 4 team this year. They might scrounge their way into 8, they might not. It doesn't look like they will. But that wasn't the purpose of their year. And even, if you mount a heroic finals campaign again, that's not it. You have to be sophisticated enough to live in the top 4 across the duration of a season. So they're a really interesting study, I think, at the end of the year, whether they finish 8th or miss from here.
Yeah, they're not winning it. So whatever it is, it's all about decision making after that. So just do an exercise. So Joel Corey gone to Fremantle. How are they going?
Yeah, excellent.
Stephen King, Gold Coast.
Yep.
How are they going?
They're going okay.
Ash Hansen, Carlton.
Yep.
Look, I think your pit crew, we undersell the group. We make it all about the one man. We make it all about Luke Beveridge. We make it all about David Noble. We make it all about Matthew Nix. We make it about one man because they're the top of the tree, and that's okay. The buck stops with them, but there's more to it. If you don't have absolute support, and in terms we're talking about support, not in how you going, mate. That's not support. Support is nailing your role, excellence in your role. Role mastery is the words they keep using at Melbourne, and I love it. And it goes across the club. Is your CEO mastering his role? Are your recruiters mastering their role? Are your assistants the best the game has? Because if they're not, you're giving up an advantage. Chris Scott has mastered this year. His assistants have set up this year. So they stripped the whole thing back at the start of the year. They said, let's operate like we've just walked in the door. Let's start with a blank canvas. How would we set this up if we were starting again? And that's exactly what they've done. They've taught the competition an absolute lesson. And we're only finding out about it halfway through the season.
So the Swans 8-8 to 2-1, the other side of that coin at the start of the game. They remain so elusive to me, Kingy. I cannot peg them.
No, you've got to watch them differently. I told you, I keep telling you, they're a different team. They do it differently. So last 6 weeks is all we look at. Second best in the comp with the football. They are seriously damaging with the ball. Guys like Warner, Goulden, they just create stuff, Jared. They're amazing. And you look at without the football now, number 1 pressure team in the competition. Number 2 for not allowing the opposition to go coast to coast, and their back 50's always been really good. The 2 McCartan boys are having a terrific patch. So in terms of ball movement and stopping ball movement, they're the best in the comp. So they are huge ticks. Winning contests in general play, so outside of clearance, they're sort of 5th, 6th, 7th. They're sort of in the area you're happy with. The clearance issue is huge for them. They haven't got a clearance beast. They've got 6 weeks to find one. If they can find one, if they can get a couple of midfield, if they can get Luke Parker to become Patrick Cripps for September, there isn't a shortage in their game. They are so dangerous to play against, so dangerous. And we're talking about Richmond being dangerous. Sydney are exactly the same. They do it in a different way, and they do it in bursts. But until they fix that clearance problem, they will always have to be moving the ball from too deep. You can't win finals consistently. You can't win 4 finals moving the ball from fullback. You've got to have some sort of territory from clearance. If they can do that, and to me, that is all on Parker, and that is all on Rowbottom. I don't know where Kennedy is. I don't know if Kennedy can get back there. But if he can, for a short window, light up, look out.
The curiosity is the Brisbane Lions COVID crisis. So the days leading up to that game, it wasn't a surprise that they lost to Essendon.
So we're allowed to disagree.
Yeah.
We're allowed to disagree. And I got a text message last night, so I don't want to go too hard. But they're not a big numbers team. But a forward kicked 5 goals against them yesterday and played with the same matchup all day. Now, in a 10-point result, I think that's significant. I know Marcus Adams got a cork thigh early in the game and maybe couldn't move the way you want him to. Maybe couldn't move at his best. But Payne couldn't get the job done on right. He didn't change his approach for the whole 4 quarters of that game. If Lachie Neale doesn't do it in the midfield, who does? I'm sick of waiting for Cam Rayner to become a prime midfielder. Zach Bailey's in awful form. So fumbly. He's double clutching everything. He's not the same finisher that he was in the first part of the year. When they were all flying, everyone was flying.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's got a little bit hard. It's got a little bit hard for Brisbane. So we're waiting to see who's it going to be. Eric Hipwood? Nah. Joe Danaher? Nah. Cam Rayner? Nah. Zach Bailey? Nah. Who is it? Jared Lyons? Yeah, he's thereabouts, but not really. So if it's not Lachie Neale, who's next? That's Chris Fagan says, oh, yeah, no, we've got some trauma in the camp with COVID and what sort of stuff. There's trauma in the camp with their group. They've got problems, Jared. They're losing form rather than gaining form. So I would have expected that a game like that, they walk into the pre-game and Chris Fagan says, right, Cam Rayner, we need you to beat your best today. Zach Bailey, you two need to be the reason we win. Didn't happen.
So they had to be maniacal yesterday, and they weren't.
Yeah.
That was the only way they were going to win. So for me, that's a game that's too compromised by COVID. We've committed to this, and they're not the first team to undergo it. But it is absolutely compromised, and I can chalk the result down to that, which is not to undermine any of that, because there are issues. I'm not a huge believer in Brisbane and haven't been as the sort of last 6 or 8 weeks have unfolded. But that's an outlier for me. The problem is if 1 week becomes 2 weeks, becomes 3 weeks. So if the next batch of players and then the next batch of players, if they end up with 3 weeks that are compromised here, well, that could shoot them from the top 4. I think the top 2 is already as good as out of reach for them. And we sort of were of that feeling early on that they had to be a top 2 team to be winning of it.
Yeah. And we're not going massive on this week. Okay, we're giving him some outs, but what they got beaten by wasn't just COVID. There was some self-inflicted wounds there and some responsibility that players couldn't pick up. They couldn't pick up the gaps. Simple as that. Anything
on Essendon, who have beaten St Kilda, Sydney and Brisbane and lost to West Coast in the 4 weeks since declaring review?
I think Kyle Langford is understated as a footballer for Essendon. It's sort of amazing to me when you get a couple of players back that play a different way to the others. So he played a bit of a different role. He played forward. Marcus Adams was trying to do a bit of zone-off stuff, and he was made pay by Langford. But Langford can go in the middle and be a bit of a defensive midfielder. Snelling can do the same. So they're in that team now. So it complements that 100% offensive Shield and Stringer and those guys in there. You know, so I think you've got to give them credit for the way they play. It's still a bit of a shootout when you play Essendon. Your turn, our turn, your turn, our turn, and we see how we wind up.
And that's what has to be resolved, doesn't it?
So there's the same problem. It's a win, but they won in the same manner they've been playing for weeks.
Okay. There's a bit still to get through. They got that right. Fremantle and Fife.
Oh, yeah. 100%. 100%. I think he's making him work for it. You know, I get the feeling outside looking, I have no intelligence on this. Yep. People say I have no intelligence, full stop. Let me add it on this, on the end of it, Jared. Stop laughing. So I think there's a bit of competitive tension there. We're going all right without you having to be the man. So you'll play where the team needs you to play, and that's not necessarily in the middle because we've got guys in there that are servicing the function of the team. But when we need you, we'll say, hey, listen, go in the middle and sort out a few issues. So on the weekend, they were getting belted at centre bounce clearance. I think it was 10-2 at halftime in favour of the Saints. And then in the post-match, Justin Longmuir said, yeah, we threw him in there in the second half. He said, you know what, I would have liked him to have put himself in the second quarter. And I thought, well, that's interesting. That's a bit of a shift. I think there's a bit of a you versus team sort of argument going on at the moment. What suits you doesn't always suit the team, and when it suits the team, will suit you. So I like that. But I do think come finals, week 1, week 2, preliminary final, which is all we talk about, centre bounce 1 preliminary final, N5 will be in the middle. He not only will he be in the middle, Jared, he'll be the hit 2 target for Sean Darcy.
I'm starting to get private texts. When are you going to talk about Carlton? They got that right, the bounce back game. Can you make sense of that game for me?
So the last time, I can't remember who put this on Twitter. It would have been Swamp, our man the Swamp. The last time a team was held goalless in the first and fourth quarters was 1919.
Scoreless,
sorry. Yeah. 1919. So
And then they came out and kicked 7 goals, 3 in the second quarter.
So to do that defensively, from a Carlton point of view, huge tick. And we're all talking about West Coast as being a dangerous commodity over this back part of the season. So I say, well done. The 2 targets up forward were just unbelievable again. 10 goals, 6, 11 marks inside 50, a few free kicks in there as well. So they're just in ripping form. I still think their midfield, whilst it was dominant, yes, I still think they've got another level still left in them. Their first 6 weeks of the season was probably bigger than what their last 6 weeks has been. So I'd like to see them go again and raise the bar again. But it's a ripping Saturday night upcoming, isn't it? Carlton versus Geelong. We've got 2 power forwards at both ends.
Yeah. Guys, I can't remember a game where the best 4 key forwards in the land are playing in the same game. This is from Aaron. Hawkins, Cameron, Charlie and Harry.
Yeah.
This is your equivalent to Top Gun Maverick in football form. Aaron, you've set the tone for the whole week with that. Salute.
Goose. You got to name him, Jerry. Before the end of the week, I want you to name him. Iceman and who else was there?
I like that idea.
Yeah. Can you name him for
I
us?
love that idea.
Well, that's a topic for your ladder predictors.
We took the kids to see Maverick over the little holiday period. It's great. Gave them a slice of our cultural upbringing.
It's good to see you clutch at things like the rest of us, Jared.
Hey, have you got a they got that wrong? That's a bit in-house.
Oh, yeah.
You coming for Kane?
Yeah.
So
Jared,
this is David King, correspondence to David King.
No, Cornes and I, we've got a great relationship. It's about to be tested. So he started the day by talking about where were Essendon when the season was on the line. Let's not give them any credit, right? Connor Rozee. This is my Don Chip, keep the bastards honest sort of speech. Okay.
Very good. So could be a new category.
Connor Rozee has 52 coaches' votes prior to what we've seen for the weekend just gone.
Yep.
Okay. 26 of his 52 coaches' votes have come against the bottom 3 teams.
Right.
Essendon, the Kangaroos, and West Coast. He didn't get a coach's vote in the first month of the year when the season was up for grabs, a la the Essendon discussion. He's got 5 of his 52 coaches' votes versus top 6 teams. So does he do it against the best? So Connor Rozee this week plays against Melbourne. So if you are the best in the comp or in the elite bracket of the comp, do it against the best. Otherwise, what are you doing? You're beating up on the also-rans. Anyone can do that. So I see Kane's reports on Rozee, and I like the way he's playing. I like his finishing. I like the fact he's starting to leg drive. He's doing those sorts of things, but do it against the best. So this weekend, they play Melbourne. We'll review that next Monday.
All right. Collingwood have won 7 in a row. Are Collingwood going to nudge their way into the seedings? I've got a couple here who've got them at 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So that's just a sample. People are putting Collingwood in their seatings. Are you?
Sounds like SEN track, giving out your quaddie numbers or your scratchings or something.
That's right, quaddie numbers.
No, I haven't got them in. And, you know, I'm going to be late to the party with the Pies if they are to be the success story that everyone keeps telling. Defensively, really good. I don't think they're as damaging with the ball as what the best teams are in the comp. I know they've stacked 7 in a row. They're close margins. They're close wins. And full credit to them. Craig McRae's pulling the right reins at the right times to get a response late in games.
Yep.
But just not for me at the moment. I don't think they're good enough for clearance. I don't think they're good enough with the ball.
Fascinating tight game record. The 2 teams they've handled have been Fremantle and Melbourne, and the rest have been real scraps. All right. Seedings after round 17. 4.
4 for me is Carlton. And I think with the big boy coming back at fullback, things are starting to fall into play. They're going to get some returning soldiers over the next few weeks. The rest of their game's in pretty good order. They play aggressive. They play honest footy. 2 key forwards that are lighting up. Everyone playing their role. 4 for me.
Yeah, I've got Fremantle at 4. Their body of work stacks up. They're ensconced in the top 4. I like that win over St Kilda. 3?
3 for me is Fremantle. You have to see Fremantle live. Watching them on television doesn't do it justice. The speed off the ball and their ability to correct and adjust their positioning is just terrific. It is awesome to watch. They're getting more brutal week on week in the midfield. Fife will be getting better and better every week. So 3 for me with a bullet.
I've got Melbourne at 3, not jumping off, but they have lost 4 out of 6, so they can't be any higher than 3 for me. 2?
2 for me is the Cats. They've won their last 7, I think, as well. So they're playing some great footy. It's different. It's aggressive. Still defensively brilliant. The Blitzarves wild card is significant for me. And I just think if Stanley can start to catch a couple in the forward 50 against opposition ruckman, that's when you know it's all coming together.
Yeah. Carlton at 2, just raw, pure excitement. I can't wait for Saturday night. They've been 2 for me a couple of times. I'm glad I skipped the St Kilda game. That was very helpful. 1, very helpful.
Now, I'm. You know what? I might be the last person on the Melbourne bus. I might be the last one on. I'm staying. I'm staying because I've got enormous trust in their leaders and their brutality.
Well, I noticed we didn't have a top-of-the-table clash, so I want a top-of-the-seedings clash.
Well, you go.
I've got Geelong at 1, Carlton at 2. For the right to go 1 on Saturday night. So you've got to have a promoter's eye to these things.
I'm only watching Connor Rosine next week.